A word about what we expect from the 18th Lok Sabha, Parliament in general. Welcome and Vanakkam. Let me begin this video by recalling a spectacle that goes back to 1974. That was my first visit to Kuwait. It was altogether a very intriguing time. I had never seen opulence of that kind. And there were many things that struck me as particularly memorable, but one particular thing I saw made me laugh my guts out. And even today, when I recall that spectacle, I cannot contain my laughter. I saw a local Arabi or local person, to be precise, a Bedouin, driving a very big limousine, an American car. I think it was Lincoln Continental. Those were the days when American cars dominated Kuwait. And Toyota and Nissan, there were car companies that were struggling to establish their foothold at that time. And if at all Toyota was bought, Toyota cars were bought for use by office peons, chaparazis. So that was the status of Japanese cars in those days. And American cars ruled the roost. They were very big, extremely comfortable, no doubt, and quite expensive. And I saw a gentleman, a Kuwaiti, driving a very jazzy American car. And then I sort of looked at the rear seats to find out who was traveling with him. And to my utter shock and great amusement, I saw 3 goats. He was carting his goats in his limousine. Now, suppose this gentleman had used a pickup, a small truck, and carted his 3 goats along the same path, the same driver, the same set of goats, but the vehicle is different. It's not a Lincoln limousine, but an ordinary pickup van. It wouldn't have provoked this laughter of derision on my part. And what made me laugh was the manifest incompatibility between the vehicle and the cargo it contained. Imagine today a Maybach, Mercedes Maybach, costing some 3 crores rupees, being used to cart cattle or goat or sheep or what have you, or hen, and you happen to see that. How would you feel about it? That's the point I'm raising. Now, why do I remember this? This was the image, or this is the image that rushes into my mind as I think of the Lok Sabha proceedings beginning from tomorrow. The nation has invested heavily, about 23,000 crores, in creating this pride of national real estate, the new Parliament building, Parliament House, with all the state-of-the-art facilities provided. It's a monumental achievement in itself. There's no doubt about it. Though I feel that the national resources must be deployed in a manner that also does justice to the needs of the poor in this country. I'm not averse to having symbols of national pride, national self-confidence being erected. So if a new parliament building with all the accessories attached to it, is to come into place, so be it. I don't have a problem. But there is a problem nonetheless, and that's precisely the point I want to raise at this point in time. Now, it is not very difficult to find 23,000 crores to build a monumental structure like this. It strains our resources, but it's something that I believe we can afford. We may not have money for education, we may not have money enough for health, we may not have enough money to improve facilities in rural India. That's okay, but we have plenty of money. India is not a poor country. As Jawaharlal Nehru wrote 60 years ago, India is a rich country inhabited by poor people. So that's a kind of contradiction that Nehru saw India embodying, and it has not changed much since his days. Now, this entire achievement, this great achievement, this monumental structure, this pride of architecture, so on and so forth, this national emblem of a resurgent India, will actually begin to be a little disappointing if the human factor that it houses proves to be not a match for it. I said it's not difficult to find the money to erect a structure of this magnitude and splendor, this grandiose structure. A far more difficult task, a task 1,000 times more difficult, is to find the human resource, the human material that matches this architectural splendor. And when there is an imbalance between the material splendor and human qualities, the total picture begins to be less than inspiring. I would even say it begins to take on the overtones of derision, of laughter. I sincerely hope that it doesn't happen that way. Now, to be more specific, the nation will look for with great keenness and interest to see the quality of debate that the Parliament witnesses in the days ahead. Will the members of the Parliament, the representatives of the 140 crore people, 1.4 billion people, a seventh of the population of the world, representing a culture that is rich, varied, diverse, enjoying the facility of this high-tech, state-of-the-art parliament in all its grandiloquence, its splendor, its majesty, its greatness, its size, its scope, so on and so forth. Will they match this splendor, or will they cut a sorry figure? My worry is this, that the grandiloquence of the structure of the parliament, the material structure, the building of the parliament and its facilities is the given. It cannot change, it is there. The uncertain factor is the quality and culture of the human element which must animate it. If the quality of debate that the parliament is going to witness, if the culture of cooperation, constructive, purposive cooperation between the treasury benches and the opposition parties, in order to maximize the welfare of the people, is very poor, then a contrast, an unfortunate contrast, a contrast that will disappoint all of us, will develop between the huge investment made to create this fantastic piece of real estate, democratic real estate, the temple of Indian democracy, and the actual quality of the people who represent India in the parliament, and the quality or lack of quality of debate that will be exemplified in the days ahead. Now, I make this reference for two reasons. One, through this video, I want to make an appeal to Sri Om Birla, the Honorable Speaker of the Lok Sabha, to conduct the affairs of the House in a manner that befits this new splendor into which we have invested so much. We should measure up to the infrastructure we have created. Usually it's the other way around. The infrastructure measures up to the stature of human beings. For example, if you go to the Sabarmati ashram, you will see two items cherished and on display in a glass almirah or showcase there. One is a pair of clocks used by Mahatma Gandhi. Other is a worn out toothbrush which was also used by Gandhi. Now, nobody can put a price tag on the pair of clocks and this worn out toothbrush. Would it fetch 100 crores, 1,000 crores? Nobody knows. Why? Because the stature of the person associated with these items was such that he lends value, dignity, and great prestige to these humble objects. But remove the person of Gandhi from these clocks and this old toothbrush, which nobody can actually use. They are good for nothing. No one would even look at them. But because the gentleman who came into contact with them or the gentleman who used them was so great, the inadequacy of the material value of these objects is more than compensated. In fact, it is transformed into something of incomparable worth. That's the principle I have in mind. Here, it could work the other way around. It should not be the case, and I sincerely pray that it would not be the case, and I earnestly hope that it would not be the case, that the worth of the parliamentary building, the parliament and all its associated structures, including the library, archives, etc., its worth suffers a diminution. It loses its worth, it loses its dignity, loses the augustness, the solemnity that we would like to associate with our parliament, the temple of Indian democracy, simply because those who occupy it on behalf of the people of India to transact the business of governing India are not able to measure themselves up to the task. After all, democracy is a culture, and running a successful democracy calls for high culture. Only a people with a high level of development merit the freedoms, the rights and privileges of democracy. You can't run a great democracy with the mindset of slaves. Slaves deserve only bondage. You can't make a person who is a slave in his mind a free person. And this is not what I am saying, this is what Aristotle wrote in his work, Politics. And even Plato agrees with this. And Aristotle, of course, is far more specific on this issue, where he says explicitly and emphatically that some people are born to be slaves. And it's futile to try and make them free. They will not fit the bill of freedom. They will create their own forms of bondage or slavery. And using their freedom of choice, they will create slavery for themselves. So one of the important questions in democracy is whether or not we prepare a people to merit democracy and the freedoms and privileges that go with it. All of these questions are involved in the central theme that I am trying to share with you. Let's look forward with great hope and expectations to see what quality of debate happens and how the business of the House is transacted in the days ahead. And here, the Speaker has a very major role to play. If the Speaker chooses to be partisan out of an overwhelming sense of gratitude to the party which has exalted him to that office, then I'm afraid we are in for a very disappointing and disturbing time. Now, I quite agree that gratitude has its place in public life and private life as well. But gratitude must be conjoined with a sense of accountability to the larger context. The Speaker of the Lok Sabha or the Chairman of Rajya Sabha certainly owe their exalted positions to BJP, a particular party. But they cannot and they should not push the extent of their gratitude to the parent party after assuming office as the Speaker of the Lok Sabha and the Chairman of Rajya Sabha to an extent that they bring discredit to the offices that they have come to adorn. In which case, the expression of gratitude will leave such a bitter taste in the mouth, and eventually it can do only harm to the interest of the party that they represent. The best that they can do to their parent party, the best that they can do to the individuals who have catapulted them to this position of eminence, is to carry out their responsibilities without fear or favor, exemplifying the greatness that should go with this office, so that the people of India, from one end to the other, experience a sense of national pride, a sense of cultural finesse, a sense of democratic maturity about the way the business of the house is transacted under the guidance of Sri Om Birla. Now, therefore, creating resplendent, grandiloquent, magnificent infrastructure is one thing. But creating a democratic culture which is vibrant, noble, and exalted enough to match the physical splendor that has been achieved at so high a cost is a different challenge altogether. And I hope the treasury benches are mindful of it. I hope the Honorable Speaker is mindful of it. And I also hope that the opposition parties now under this new banner of the India coalition are also aware of it, because this is a task that is preserving the dignity and nobility of the House is a shared goal which can be accomplished only in a cooperative manner in which the treasury benches and the opposition parties are equal partners. But then unless and until the treasury benches, and including the Speaker of the House, extends to the opposition parties the recognition, the respect, the opportunities that they deserve in a parliamentary democratic system, this entire project cannot be achieved, and the whole thing can become counterproductive, and it will leave behind, God forbid, it will leave behind a regrettable spell of unfortunate memories where the dignity of the nation suffered and people's welfare was forgotten in the interest of petty, narrow political gains. And I hope and pray that the media in this country would change their course. They will retrieve their temporarily misplaced conscience and discharge their duties in a democratic polity, where the journalistic dharma is not to become courtiers to suck up to the sense of importance of those in seats of power, but as we have always said, to speak truth to the centers of power, so that the exercise of power remains healthy and conducive to the health and wholeness of the country. And as Lord Acton said, all power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Unfortunately, the power of the state is nearly absolute. And the more absolute the power of the state becomes, and under very efficient, dictatorial leadership, the power of the state becomes all the more intimidating. In such a context, the duty of the media in a country, in a democratic country, becomes all the more crucial in bridling the exercise of power to ensure that fundamental human rights as enshrined in the Constitution are not trampled upon. And that end of the day, the classic definition of democracy as government of the people, by the people, for the people, is not lost sight of. The basic duty of media in a democratic polity is to keep the focus of the nation fixed on the challenge of prioritizing the welfare of the people. The parliament cannot exist for itself. The parliament is only a tool, and a tool that does not serve its purpose becomes a liability, and it will discredit itself, and people will only have contempt for that which pretends to offer a great deal but in effect delivers little, which I sincerely hope will not be the case with the 18th Lok Sabha, and that the greatness and the glory that all of us dream for our country would be fully realized, and that we have a parliament that measures up to the hopes and aspirations of every Indian. Thank you, and see you soon.